Daughter saved mother from husband's evil plan, but what happened next shocks everyone. Hello everyone, welcome to our story. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. It was 10:30 at night. Lydia was getting ready for bed when she heard her husband, Charles, in the kitchen making tea. This was strange because Charles never made tea. Their 14-year-old daughter, Rachel, was supposed to be doing homework upstairs. But she wasn't. She was watching her father through a crack in her bedroom door. Rachel had been watching her dad for weeks. Something was wrong with him. He acted differently. He whispered on phone calls. He came home late. And tonight he was doing something strange that made her stomach feel sick. She watched her dad take out a small glass bottle from his jacket pocket. The liquid inside was clear like water. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. Then he poured a few drops into the teacup. "Lydia," Charles had called sweetly from the kitchen. "I made you some tea, honey." Rachel's heart started beating fast. She had to warn her mother. She ran downstairs and grabbed her mom's arm just as Lydia was walking to the kitchen. "Mom, wait," Rachel whispered. "What's wrong, sweetie?" Lydia asked. Rachel's hands were shaking. Her voice was shaking too. Then suddenly the words burst out of Rachel's mouth. "Don't drink that tea, Mom. Dad wants to hurt you." Lydia felt her heart stop. Her daughter's wide eyes were filled with fear. She could barely breathe as Rachel repeated, "Dad put something harmful in your tea. I saw him do it." Lydia froze. The man she had trusted with everything, could he really be trying to slip something into her drink? This was the night that would change her life forever. 15 years earlier, Lydia had married Charles Johnson. She was only 22 years old, fresh out of college with dreams of becoming a teacher. Charles was 25, working as a car salesman, and he swept her off her feet with his smooth words and big promises. "I'm going to make you the happiest woman in the world," he had told her on their wedding day. "You'll never have to worry about anything as long as I'm here." Lydia believed him completely. She came from a good family. Her father had owned several acres of farmland outside the city, and when he died, he left everything to Lydia. The land was worth a lot of money and it could have secured her future. But Lydia was in love, and love made her trust Charles with everything. In their first year of marriage, Charles seemed like the perfect husband. He brought her flowers every Friday. He cooked breakfast for her on Sundays. He talked about their future children and the big house they would build together. Lydia felt like the luckiest woman alive. When baby Rachel was born 3 years into their marriage, Lydia thought their family was complete. She quit her job as a teacher to stay home with the baby. Charles promised he would take care of everything financially. "Don't worry, honey," he would say. "I've got big plans. We're going to be rich soon." But Charles's big plans never worked out. His first business idea was a small restaurant. He convinced Lydia to give him $5,000 from her savings account, money her father had left her. "This restaurant is going to make us so much money," Charles said with excitement in his eyes. "In 2 years we'll own 3 restaurants." The restaurant failed within 6 months. Charles lost every penny. "It's okay," Lydia told him, even though she was worried. "We can try something else." Next, Charles wanted to start a construction company. This time he needed $10,000. Lydia didn't have that much cash left, so she sold her grandmother's gold jewelry. These were beautiful pieces that had been passed down through 3 generations of women in her family. Her grandmother's wedding ring, her great-grandmother's necklace, earrings that told the story of her family's history. "Are you sure about this?" Lydia's mother had asked when she found out. "That jewelry is irreplaceable." "Charles knows what he's doing," Lydia had replied. "This construction company is going to change our lives." The construction company also failed. Charles blamed the economy, bad luck, and dishonest partners. But the jewelry was gone forever. After that came the clothing store idea. Charles needed $15,000 this time. Lydia had no more savings and no more jewelry to sell. So she did something that broke her mother's heart. She used her father's farmland as collateral for a bank loan. "Lydia, please don't do this," her mother begged. "That land has been in our family for 50 years. Your father wanted you to keep it safe for Rachel's future." But Lydia trusted her husband. She believed in his dreams. She signed the papers. The clothing store failed too. They almost lost the farmland, and Lydia had to work 3 jobs to pay back the bank loan. She cleaned houses in the morning, worked at a grocery store in the afternoon, and waitressed at a restaurant at night. Little Rachel barely saw her mother during those months. Charles kept promising that his next idea would be different. "I just need one more chance," he would say. "One more chance to prove myself." But his carpet cleaning business failed. His car wash failed. His delivery service failed. Every business Charles touched turned to dust, and every time Lydia found a way to support him through it. She sold her car and took the bus to work. She grew vegetables in their backyard to save money on food. She bought clothes for herself and Rachel from thrift stores. She did whatever it took to keep their family together. The worst part wasn't the money they lost. The worst part was watching Charles change. With each failed business, he became more angry, more bitter, more distant. He started blaming Lydia for his failures. "If you had more faith in me, maybe my businesses would succeed," he would say during their fights. "If you were a better wife, maybe I wouldn't be so stressed all the time. If you had given me more money from the beginning, maybe I could have done things right." Lydia began to feel like everything was her fault. She worked harder, sacrificed more, and tried to be the perfect wife. But nothing she did seemed to make Charles happy anymore. In recent months, Charles had grown even colder. He stopped talking to her about his day. He stopped eating dinner with the family. He started coming home very late at night, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't Lydia's. When Lydia asked him about it, he would explode with anger. "Why are you always questioning me? Can't a man have some peace in his own house?" Rachel had started noticing her father's strange behavior too. She would find him whispering on phone calls that he quickly ended when she walked into the room. She caught him looking through important papers late at night, papers about the inheritance and life insurance policies. Most disturbing of all, Rachel had seen her father with another woman. It happened 3 weeks ago when she was walking home from school. She saw her father's car parked outside a coffee shop, and when she looked through the window, she saw him holding hands with a beautiful woman with long hair and bright red lipstick. The woman was laughing at something Charles said, and he was looking at her the way he used to look at Lydia years ago, like she was the most wonderful person in the world. Rachel's heart broke for her mother, but she didn't know how to tell her what she had seen. Now, as Lydia stood in her living room with her frightened daughter clinging to her arm, all of those strange moments suddenly made terrible sense. The late nights, the secret phone calls, the way he looked at her like she was in his way. Charles didn't love her anymore. He wanted her gone. But it was worse than that. He didn't just want her to leave. He wanted her dead. But why? What could he possibly gain from harming her? And then it hit her like a bolt of lightning. The farmland. The life insurance policy. If she died, Charles would inherit everything. He could marry his girlfriend and start fresh with money and property that rightfully belonged to Lydia and Rachel. She had sacrificed everything for this man. Her career, her inheritance, her family's trust, her own happiness, all for Charles. And this was how he repaid her. With poison in her nightly tea. "Mom?" Rachel whispered, seeing the shocked look on her mother's face. "What do we do now?" But even as Rachel spoke those words, Lydia was shaking her head. This couldn't be true. This was her husband. The father of her child. The man she had loved for 15 years. "Rachel, honey," Lydia said softly, "I know your father has been acting strange lately, but this is too much. Charles would never try to hurt me. But Mom, I saw him." "Maybe you saw something else," Lydia interrupted. "Maybe he was putting sugar in the tea or honey or some kind of medicine. There has to be another explanation." Just then, Charles appeared in the doorway of the living room, holding the cup of tea with a smile on his face. "There you are, Lydia. I was wondering what was taking you so long. Your tea is getting cold." Rachel grabbed her mother's arm, her eyes wide with fear. But Lydia gently pulled away. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lydia whispered to her daughter. Then she walked over to Charles and took the cup from his hands. "Thank you for making this for me," she said, looking into her husband's eyes for any sign of deception. Charles smiled warmly. "Of course, honey. Anything for my beautiful wife." He kissed her forehead gently. "I'm going to watch some TV downstairs. Don't stay up too late, okay?" "I won't," Lydia replied. "Good night, Charles." "Good night, sweetheart." Charles left the room and Lydia could hear his footsteps going down the stairs. She brought the cup to her lips. She could smell the familiar chamomile scent. It smelled exactly like it always did. "Mom, please don't," Rachel cried out. But it was too late. Lydia took a sip of the tea. It tasted normal. Sweet and warm just like always. Maybe Rachel had been wrong. Maybe her imagination was playing tricks on her. It tasted normal. Sweet and warm just like always. Maybe Rachel had been wrong. Maybe her imagination was playing tricks on her. Rachel watched in horror as her mother took another sip, then another. Her heart was pounding, but there was nothing she could do now. "I'm going to bed now," Lydia said, finishing half the cup. She called out toward the stairs, "Thank you again for the tea, Charles." But 20 minutes later, as Lydia was getting ready for bed, she started to feel strange. Her head felt heavy and the room seemed to be spinning slightly. She sat down on the edge of her bed, holding her head in her hands. "I must be more tired than I thought," she whispered to herself. But deep down, a small voice was beginning to whisper, "What if Rachel was right?" Over the next few days, Lydia paid closer attention to how she felt after drinking her nightly tea. Each morning she woke up with a headache. Each day she felt weak and dizzy. Each night, Charles made sure to bring her tea and watch her drink it. And each day, Rachel grew more determined to prove what she had seen. The 14-year-old girl began following her father secretly. She hid behind doors to listen to his phone calls. She watched him through windows when he thought no one was looking. And what she discovered made her blood run cold. 3 days after the first incident, Rachel was hiding in the closet near her parents' bedroom when she heard her father on the phone. "It's working perfectly, Vanessa," Charles whispered into his cell phone. "She's getting weaker every day. A few more weeks of this and she'll be too sick to fight anything. The doctors will think it's some kind of illness." Rachel held her breath, her hands shaking as she pressed record on her own phone. "Are you sure the poison won't be detected?" a woman's voice asked through the speaker. "Positive," Charles replied. "It's designed to look like natural sickness. And once she's gone, we can be together. All her family's land will be mine, plus the life insurance money. We'll be rich, baby." The woman laughed. "I can't wait to be Mrs. Charles Johnson. Soon, Vanessa. Very soon." Rachel's heart was beating so loud she was afraid her father would hear it. She had the evidence now. But she needed more. The next day, Rachel followed her father to a coffee shop downtown. Through the window, she saw him sitting with a beautiful woman with long hair and red lipstick. They were holding hands and laughing together. Rachel took pictures with her phone. She took pictures of them kissing. She took pictures of the woman putting her arms around her father. But the most important evidence was still at home. That evening, when Charles was taking a shower, Rachel snuck into her parents' bedroom. She found his jacket hanging in the closet and carefully reached into the pocket. Her fingers found the small glass bottle. It was half empty now. Quickly, she took pictures of the bottle from every angle. Then she carefully took it out of his pocket and put it in her own bag, replacing it with a similar bottle filled with water that she had prepared. Now she had everything she needed: recordings, photos, and the poison itself. But Rachel knew she couldn't handle this alone. She needed help from an adult she could trust. That's when she remembered Detective Harris, a family friend who had helped them a few years ago when their house was robbed. The next day after school, Rachel went to the police station. "Detective Harris," she said when she found him, "I need your help. My father is trying to hurt my mother." Detective Harris looked at the serious expression on the young girl's face and sat down to listen. Rachel showed him the recordings, the photos, and the bottle of poison. She explained everything she had seen and heard over the past week. "This is very serious, Rachel," Detective Harris said after examining all the evidence. "But we need to be careful. If we act too quickly, your father might hurt your mother or run away. We need to catch him when he can't escape and when there are witnesses." "What do we do?" Rachel asked. "We wait for the right moment," Detective Harris said. "And when that moment comes, we'll be ready." Meanwhile, Charles had no idea that his poison bottle had been replaced with water. Every night, he continued to make Lydia's tea, adding what he thought were deadly drops to the cup. But now that Rachel had switched the bottles, Charles was only adding harmless water to her mother's tea. This gave Lydia time to start feeling better. The headaches began to fade. The dizziness stopped. She had more energy during the day. Charles, however, was getting frustrated. Why wasn't Lydia getting sicker? Why did she seem to be getting stronger instead of weaker? "How are you feeling, honey?" Charles would ask Lydia each morning, watching her face carefully. "Much better, actually," Lydia would reply, not noticing the disappointed look that flashed across her husband's face. Charles began to pressure Lydia more about drinking her nightly tea. "You didn't finish your tea last night," he would say, standing over her as she held the cup. "I was just tired," Lydia would explain. "But the tea helps you sleep better. You should drink all of it." Lydia began to notice how closely Charles watched her when she drank the tea. How he would stand there until she finished the entire cup. How disappointed he looked when she felt healthy the next day. A cold feeling started to grow in her stomach. What if Rachel had been right all along? One evening, Lydia decided to test her suspicions. When Charles brought her the tea, she pretended to drink it. But instead of swallowing, she let the tea run down her chin and onto her nightgown when Charles wasn't looking directly at her. "Oops," she said, wiping her chin. "I'm so clumsy tonight." "It's okay," Charles said, but his voice sounded tense. Just drink the rest. Lydia pretended to finish the cup, but she was actually pouring most of the tea into a tissue that she held under the cup. The next morning, when Charles asked how she felt, Lydia decided to test him further. I feel terrible, she lied, putting her hand to her forehead. I have a headache and I feel dizzy. Charles's face lit up with satisfaction. Oh no, sweetheart. You should rest today. Don't worry about anything. But when Lydia said she felt fine, Charles would frown and look worried, not the kind of worried a loving husband should be, but worried like someone whose plan wasn't working. This confirmed Lydia's worst fears. Her husband really was slipping something into her tea. But she couldn't confront him alone. She needed help. She needed proof. And most importantly, she needed to protect Rachel. That's when Rachel came to her with an idea. Mom, Rachel said quietly one afternoon when Charles was out. I know you figured it out. About the tea. Lydia looked at her brave daughter and nodded. Yes, I know. But how do we stop him? I've been working with Detective Harris, Rachel explained. We have evidence, but we need to catch Dad in the act, with witnesses around so he can't deny it or run away. What do you mean? Grandma's birthday party is next week. All the family will be there. Uncle Mike, Aunt Sarah, Cousin David, everyone. Dad always makes a big show about being the perfect husband at family gatherings. Lydia understood. You want to expose him in front of the whole family. Detective Harris says it's the perfect time. Dad will be confident because he thinks his plan is working. He won't expect us to have evidence. And with so many witnesses, he won't be able to lie his way out of it. Lydia felt scared and excited at the same time. After all these years of being fooled by Charles, she would finally see justice. What do I need to do? She asked her daughter. Just act normal. Pretend you don't know anything. Let him think he's winning. But acting normal was harder than Lydia thought. Every time Charles smiled at her, she wanted to scream. Every time he touched her, her skin crawled. Every time he brought her tea, she had to fight the urge to throw it in his face. Charles, meanwhile, was growing more confident by the day. He thought Lydia was getting weaker, and he had no idea that his poison had been replaced with water. He started making phone calls to Vanessa more openly, thinking that Lydia was too sick to pay attention. Just a few more weeks, baby, Rachel heard him whisper into the phone one night. Soon she'll be so weak that when she dies, no one will be surprised. Everyone will think it was just illness. I can't wait to be your wife, Vanessa's voice came through the phone. I'm tired of hiding our love. Soon we won't have to hide anymore, Charles promised. Soon we'll have everything. But what Charles didn't know was that Rachel was recording every word. The night before Grandma's birthday party, Rachel couldn't sleep. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow the whole family would learn the truth about Charles. She just hoped their plan would work. The next evening, the Johnson family home was filled with laughter and conversation. Grandma Eleanor was turning 75, and all her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren had come to celebrate. Uncle Mike was telling jokes in the living room. Aunt Sarah was helping in the kitchen. Cousin David was playing with the younger kids in the backyard. The house felt warm and happy, exactly the way family gatherings should feel. Charles was in his element. He moved through the crowd like the perfect son-in-law, shaking hands with the men, complimenting the women, and telling everyone how proud he was of his beautiful family. Lydia is such a blessing, he told Uncle Mike with a big smile. I don't know what I'd do without her. She's been so supportive through all my business ventures. You're a lucky man, Charles, Uncle Mike replied. Not many wives would stick by their husbands through so many challenges. Oh, I know exactly how lucky I am, Charles said, his eyes gleaming with a look that made Rachel's stomach turn. Lydia played her part perfectly. She smiled and laughed with the relatives, helped serve food, and acted like the happy wife everyone expected her to be. But inside her heart was pounding. Detective Harris was outside in an unmarked car, waiting for Rachel's signal. 2 other police officers were positioned around the house, disguised as neighbors out for evening walks. As the evening went on, Charles became more and more relaxed. He started drinking wine and talking louder. He began bragging about his future plans. You know, Charles said to a group of male relatives, I've been thinking about investing in some land. There are opportunities out there for a man with vision. What kind of land? Cousin David asked. Charles glanced around to make sure Lydia wasn't listening, then lowered his voice. Well, let's just say that sometimes good things come to those who wait. Sometimes life gives you exactly what you deserve. Uncle Mike looked confused. What do you mean? I mean that soon, very soon, I'm going to have everything I've ever wanted. A beautiful woman who appreciates me, financial security, and freedom to live the life I deserve. The men looked at each other uncertainly. Charles was talking strangely, but they couldn't quite understand what he meant. But Rachel, who was listening from the doorway, understood perfectly. Her father was so confident in his dark plan that he was practically confessing in front of the whole family. Rachel caught her mother's eye across the room and nodded. It was time. She walked quietly to the front door and sent a text message to Detective Harris. Ready. Then she returned to the living room where most of the family had gathered to sing Happy Birthday to Grandma Eleanor. As the song ended and everyone was clapping, Rachel stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear and strong. Before we cut the cake, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I have something important to share with the family. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned to the 14-year-old girl standing in the center of the room. Charles looked surprised but not worried. Rachel, sweetheart, this isn't the time for speeches. Let Grandma Eleanor have her moment. This is about Mom, Rachel said, looking directly at her father. This is about what you've been doing to her. Now Charles looked concerned. Rachel, you're being inappropriate. Go to your room. No, Dad. I'm not going anywhere. Rachel pulled out her phone. Everyone needs to hear this. She pressed play on a recording. Charles's voice filled the quiet room. It's working perfectly, Vanessa. She's getting weaker every day. A few more weeks of this and she'll be too sick to fight anything. The doctors will think it's some kind of illness. Gasps echoed through the room. Everyone stared at the phone, then at Charles, then back at the phone. Are you sure the poison won't be detected? Vanessa's voice asked through the speaker. Positive. It's designed to look like natural sickness. And once she's gone, we can be together. All her family's land will be mine, plus the life insurance money. We'll be rich, baby. The room erupted in shocked voices. Grandma Eleanor put her hand over her heart. Uncle Mike jumped to his feet. Aunt Sarah started crying. That's not real. Charles shouted, his face turning red. She made that up. Kids can fake anything with computers these days. But Rachel wasn't finished. She held up a small glass bottle for everyone to see. Then explain this, she said. The liquid you've been putting in Mom's tea every night. Charles stared at the bottle in horror. How did Rachel get that? He had been so careful to hide it. You went through my things? He shouted at his daughter. That's stealing. That's illegal. What's illegal is trying to murder your wife. Uncle Mike roared, standing up and facing Charles. How could you do this to Lydia? To our family? It's not what you think. Charles said desperately, backing toward the wall. That bottle, it's medicine. For Lydia's headaches. Medicine. Aunt Sarah said through her tears. Then why were you talking about poison on that recording? Charles looked around the room at all the angry, shocked faces staring at him. His own family members, people who had welcomed him, trusted him, loved him for 15 years, were looking at him like he was a monster. You don't understand, he said, his voice getting higher and more panicked. Lydia has been holding me back. All these years she's been sabotaging my businesses, making me fail. She doesn't support my dreams. She gave you everything. Grandma Eleanor said, her voice shaking with anger. She sold her grandmother's jewelry for you. She worked 3 jobs for you. She almost lost her father's land because of you. And this is how you repay her kindness? Cousin David added. By trying to harm her? Charles was sweating now, looking frantically around the room for an escape route. But family members had moved to block the doorways without even realizing it. Where's Vanessa now, Dad? Rachel asked, pulling out her phone again. Should I show everyone the pictures I took of you two together? No. Charles lunged toward his daughter, trying to grab her phone. But Uncle Mike caught his arm. Don't you dare touch her. Get away from me. Charles shouted, trying to break free. This is all lies. My own daughter is lying about me. That's when Lydia finally spoke. She had been standing quietly in the corner, tears streaming down her face as she watched her husband's true character revealed to everyone she loved. I felt it, she said softly, but her voice carried through the quiet room. Every morning for weeks I woke up sick. Headaches, dizziness, weakness. I thought I was just stressed about money, but it was the tea, wasn't it, Charles? Charles stopped struggling and stared at his wife. Lydia, please. You have to understand. I never wanted to hurt you. I needed a fresh start. You needed me dead, Lydia finished, her voice growing stronger. So you could marry your girlfriend and take my family's land. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Charles? Lydia asked, stepping closer to him. Tell me how you can face your wife every day after slipping something into her drink the night before. Tell me what it's like to kiss your daughter goodnight while planning to make her an orphan." Charles opened his mouth but no words came out. For the first time in 15 years he had nothing to say. That's when the front door opened and Detective Harris walked in with 2 police officers. "Charles Johnson," Detective Harris said in a calm official voice, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to cause serious harm and for endangering lives." The room went completely silent except for the sound of handcuffs clicking shut around Charles's wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," Detective Harris continued. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." As the police officers read Charles's rights, he kept staring at Lydia with desperate eyes. "Lydia, please," he said as they led him toward the door. 15 years of marriage has to count for something. I made mistakes but I love you. I've always loved you." Lydia looked at the man she had sacrificed everything for, the man who had tried to hurt her life for money, the man who was begging for forgiveness while still lying to her face. "If you loved me," she said quietly, "you never would have slipped something in my tea." The police officers led Charles out of the house and into the waiting patrol car. Through the window the family could see him in the back seat, his head in his hands. Detective Harris approached Lydia. "Mrs. Johnson, we'll need you and Rachel to come to the station tomorrow to give your official statements. We've also put out a warrant for Vanessa Martinez. She won't get far." Lydia nodded, still feeling shocked by everything that had happened. As the police cars drove away, the family slowly began to process what they had just witnessed. Grandma Eleanor sat down heavily in her chair, looking much older than her 75 years. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "I can't believe Charles would do such a thing. I can't believe Rachel figured it out," Uncle Mike said, putting his arm around his brave young niece. "You saved your mother's life, kiddo." But Rachel didn't feel like celebrating. She looked at her mother, who was standing by the window watching the police cars disappear into the night. "Mom?" Rachel said softly. "Are you okay?" Lydia turned away from the window and looked at her daughter. For a moment she didn't answer. Then, suddenly she began to cry. Not just tears, but deep, painful sobs that came from 15 years of betrayal, sacrifice, and broken dreams. Rachel rushed to her mother and wrapped her arms around her. Aunt Sarah joined them, then Uncle Mike, then Grandma Eleanor. Soon the whole family was surrounding Lydia with love and support. "I'm so sorry, Lydia," Grandma Eleanor whispered. "We should have seen the signs. We should have protected you." "It's not your fault," Lydia said through her tears. "I didn't see it either. I trusted him completely. I gave him everything I had." "He fooled all of us," Uncle Mike said angrily. "That man is a master manipulator. But he's gone now and he can't hurt you anymore." The family stayed with Lydia and Rachel until very late that night. They canceled the birthday celebration, but somehow, being together felt more important than any party. Over the next few days, the truth about Charles and Vanessa came out in the newspapers and on TV. The police had arrested Vanessa at a hotel where she was waiting for Charles to call her with news of Lydia's death. When the officers showed up instead, Vanessa immediately tried to blame everything on Charles. But the recorded phone calls proved that she was just as guilty as he was. The whole city was talking about the case. Local man tries to slip something in wife's drink for inheritance money. Teenage girl saves mother from murder plot. Love triangle leads to attempted murder. Lydia found it embarrassing to have her private life spread across the news, but Rachel reminded her of something important. "Mom, maybe our story will help other women who are in bad marriages. Maybe they'll see the signs earlier than we did." Lydia realized her daughter was right. If sharing their story could save even one other family, then the embarrassment was worth it. But even though Charles was in jail and Vanessa was facing charges, Lydia's healing was just beginning. She had to face the reality of being a single mother. She had to figure out how to support herself and Rachel without Charles's income, which had never been much anyway. Most importantly, she had to deal with the emotional damage of learning that the man she loved had tried to harm her. "I feel so stupid," she told Rachel one evening as they sat in their quiet house. "How could I have been so blind for so long?" "You're not stupid, Mom," Rachel said firmly. "You're kind and trusting and loving. Those are good things. Dad took advantage of your good heart, but that doesn't make you stupid. That makes him evil." Lydia looked at her wise 14-year-old daughter and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. Rachel had grown up too fast, forced to become the protector when the adults in her life had failed her. "I'm sorry you had to go through all this," Lydia said. "I'm sorry you had to be the one to save us." "I'm not sorry," Rachel replied. I'm proud that I was brave enough to protect you. And I'm proud that you were strong enough to survive. A few weeks later, Lydia made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. I want to move back to my father's house, she told the family during Sunday dinner at Grandma Eleanor's house. The farmhouse? Uncle Mike asked. But that place has been empty for years. It needs a lot of work. I know, Lydia said. But it's mine. It's the one thing Charles never got his hands on. And I think Rachel and I need a fresh start somewhere that has good memories instead of bad ones. Grandma Eleanor smiled. Your father would be so happy to know you're coming home to the land he loved. What will you do for work? Aunt Sarah asked practically. Lydia had been thinking about that question for days. I want to try farming. I know it sounds crazy, but I remember helping my father in the fields when I was little. I loved the feeling of growing something from nothing, of taking care of the land and having it take care of us. It's not crazy at all, Cousin David said. There's a growing market for locally grown vegetables and fruits. People want fresh, healthy food and they're willing to pay good prices for it. But do you know how to run a farm business? Uncle Mike asked. Rachel spoke up. We can learn together. And we'll have family to help us when we need it. The idea of starting over felt both scary and exciting to Lydia. For 15 years she had built her life around Charles and his dreams. Now, for the first time, she could build something that was entirely her own. 2 months after Charles's arrest, Lydia and Rachel moved into the old farmhouse. The place needed new paint, new plumbing, and a lot of cleaning, but it felt like home in a way their house with Charles never had. Look, Mom, Rachel said on their first morning, pointing out the kitchen window. You can see all the land from here. All the possibilities. Lydia stood beside her daughter and looked out at the acres of earth that belonged to them now. The land was overgrown and neglected, but she could imagine it full of crops, green and healthy and productive. You're right, she said, putting her arm around Rachel. All the possibilities. The first year was hard. Lydia and Rachel had to learn everything from scratch: how to prepare soil, when to plant seeds, how to protect crops from insects and weather. They made mistakes. Some crops failed. Some days they wondered if they had made the right decision. But slowly things began to improve. Uncle Mike helped them build a greenhouse. Aunt Sarah taught them how to preserve vegetables. Cousin David helped them set up a website to sell their produce online. The whole family pitched in to make the farm a success. By the second year, Lydia's vegetables were winning prizes at the local farmers market. People came from all over the county to buy her tomatoes, her corn, her fresh herbs. She hired 3 local women to help with the harvest, creating jobs in the community. Meanwhile, Charles's trial made headlines for months. The evidence was overwhelming: the recordings, the photos, the poison bottle, witness testimony. Charles was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder and conspiracy. Vanessa received 15 years as his accomplice. During the trial, Lydia had to face Charles one more time. He looked older, thinner, broken. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Lydia stood up and spoke from her heart. For 15 years, I believed that being a good wife meant sacrificing everything for my husband's dreams, she said. I gave him my savings, my inheritance, my health, my trust, and my love. I thought that was what love looked like. She looked directly at Charles, who couldn't meet her eyes. But real love doesn't ask someone to destroy themselves. Real love doesn't involve poison. Real love doesn't plot murder for money. What you felt for me wasn't love, it was ownership. And what I felt for you wasn't love, it was fear of being alone. She turned to address the judge. Today I'm not just a victim. Today I'm a survivor. Today I'm a woman who learned that the most important love comes from family who truly cares, from a daughter who was brave enough to save me, and from learning to love and respect myself. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying, not just Lydia's family, but strangers who had been moved by her words. 3 years after Charles's arrest, Lydia's farm was thriving beyond anyone's expectations. She had expanded to 50 acres, employed 12 people, and supplied fresh produce to restaurants in 3 different cities. But more importantly, she had found peace. Rachel, now 17, had grown into a confident young woman. She worked on the farm after school and during summers, but she also excelled in her studies. She had been accepted to several colleges and planned to study business and agriculture so she could help expand their farming operation. I'm so proud of you, Mom, Rachel said one evening as they sat on the porch of their renovated farmhouse, watching the sunset over their fields. Look at everything you've built. We built, Lydia corrected her. None of this would have been possible without you. Do you ever regret it? Rachel asked. Leaving the city? Starting over? Lydia thought about the question seriously. Sometimes I regret the years I wasted with your father. Sometimes I regret not seeing the signs sooner. But I don't regret starting over. I don't regret coming home to this land. And I certainly don't regret that my daughter was brave enough to save both our lives. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin to dance over their crops. The air smelled like fresh earth and growing things. In the distance, they could hear the laughter of children playing in the workers' families' homes that Lydia had built on the property. "Mom," Rachel said suddenly, "what do you think would have happened if I hadn't been watching that night? If I hadn't seen Dad add the liquid to your tea?" Lydia shuddered to think about it. "I don't know, sweetheart. But I do know this, you saved me in more ways than one. You didn't just save my life. You saved me from wasting the rest of my life with a man who didn't deserve my love." Rachel smiled. And now, Lydia said, looking out at the life they had built together, "I realized that I thought I had to sacrifice everything for a man to prove my worth. But the true blessing was right beside me all along, my daughter, my family, and my own strength." She stood up and stretched, ready to go inside and plan the next day's harvest. "Come on, kiddo. We have an early morning tomorrow. Mrs. Peterson's restaurant wants 50 pounds of tomatoes delivered by noon." As they walked into their warm, safe home together, Lydia felt something she hadn't felt in years: complete happiness. Not happiness that depended on someone else's approval or love, but happiness that came from knowing she had built something good and meaningful with her own hands and her daughter's help. Charles had tried to destroy her, but instead, he had set her free. And Rachel, the brave 14-year-old who had whispered, "Don't drink that tea, Mom," on a rainy night 3 years ago, had grown into a young woman who understood that sometimes the child has to save the parent, and sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to tell the truth. Outside their window, the fields stretched endlessly under the star-filled sky, fields that belonged to them, crops that they had grown, and a future that they had earned through courage, hard work, and unbreakable love. The nightmare was over. The dream had just begun. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.